Hi everyone, and welcome to Rainier View. My name is Jeff. We're so excited that you're joining us today as we continue in our series called where we will be looking at what God is calling us to as a church. We want Rainier View to be reaching our communities, and those communities are very diverse. So we have to care about those who are different than us in order to create a church that's going to reflect the vision of the future of God's people as we see in Revelation. And so, hey, here's Pastor Mike.
Hey everybody, this is Mike, and kind of during this current season of life, it can almost feel wrong to be looking forward to things at the rate that things are getting canceled in our world. But there are certain things that you can get excited for. And for me and my two sons, Nathan and Logan, something that we are really excited about, at the end of this month, Disney Plus is releasing season 2 of The Mandalorian. Now, if you're not a huge Star Wars nerd like I am, or my sons, I need to probably fill you in a little bit, and that The Mandalorian is a TV show about a bounty hunter who is a Mandalorian. Now, a Mandalorian isn't a race of people, but rather it's a community of people who choose to live by a certain code, and that certain code can be summed up in 4 words. If you're in the interactive service right now, feel free to go ahead and type them out. If you're watching this service with other people and you know what those 4 words are, go ahead and say it. If you don't know what they are, you need to watch the following clip.
Will do well. Reserve some for the foundlings.
As it should always be. The foundlings are the future. This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
So when an individual chose to live by the code of the Mandalorian, that they were sacrificing themselves, choosing to live by this higher standard of life. That this is the way kind of reminded them of the way that they needed to live. And I think for all of us, we want to live like a Mandalorian. Well, okay, maybe only huge nerds like me want to be a Mandalorian with body armor and a cool helmet and all that kind of stuff, but I think we all want to be identified with a higher calling in life. We all want to be able to confidently say, this is the way. I know how I should be living. Well, knowing the way is possible. Jesus himself said the following words in John chapter 14, verse 6. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Jesus proved that he was the way in allowing himself to be arrested and to be put on trial and to be convicted of crimes that he didn't even commit. And as a result of being convicted of these false allegations, he went to the cross to die for our sins. He died on that cross, he was buried in a cave, and on the 3rd day, he was resurrected. He defeated the power of sin and he defeated the power of death. Again, proving his real power over death and over sin. And so it was several weeks after his resurrection that he said the following words to some of his disciples in Acts chapter 1, where he said, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth." So Jesus is the way, and he's laying out what it looks like to follow the way. It's pretty simple. He says, you're going to go out and you're going to be my witnesses. You're going to go out and you're going to tell people about me. You're going to tell people about what you have seen. And you're going to start right here in the city of Jerusalem. And then from there, you're going to move out and you're going to go into the entire country of Judea. And from there, you're going to move out into Samaria. And you're going to go to the very ends of the earth to be able to tell people about me, to witness to others what you have seen. Jesus lays out this great plan, and there's only one problem. His followers never got beyond the first part of the plan. Now, don't get me wrong, they were incredible witnesses in the city of Jerusalem. They loved telling their fellow Jews about Jesus. God did incredible works in the city of Jerusalem, changing people's hearts, and we see this little group of followers grow and grow and grow into this movement of thousands of people. And it stayed right there in Jerusalem. The plan that Jesus laid out, the way that he lays out is they are to go to all the nations. They are to witness about Jesus to everybody, every race, every ethnicity, every kind of person needs to hear about Jesus. But the the people were just satisfied telling others that were just like them. And that's not what Jesus called them to. Something needed to change. So if you have your Bibles, I'd like you to turn to Acts chapter 8. We're going to get there in a minute to see kind of what happens. But to give you a little bit of context, in Acts chapter 6 and 7, we see kind of a turning point in the church, in that this man named Stephen, a follower of the way, an incredible servant of God, gets killed. He gets martyred for his faith. He is stoned to death. Literally, Jewish leaders come up with rocks and throw rocks at him until he is dead, okay? So he was stoned to death. And his murder sets off this chain of events that then we can see in Acts chapter 8, starting in verse 1. And it reads as follows. On that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen and mourned deeply for him. But Saul began to destroy the church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put them in prison. So the stoning of Stephen kind of opens the floodgates for persecution of the early followers of the way. And things get really ugly really fast. And thousands of believers are forced to flee from Jerusalem for fear of persecution, and they head out into the surrounding areas. Specifically Judea and Samaria, the very places that Jesus told them to go in the first place. And we've got Saul, who's doing everything he can to shut down the way. He's persecuting, arresting, having people killed. But ironically, despite all of his efforts, the exact opposite happens of what he is hoping for. Let's keep reading in Acts 8. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. Philip went down to a city in Samaria and proclaimed the Messiah there. When the crowds heard Philip and saw the signs he performed, they all paid close attention to what he said. For with shrieks, impure spirits came out of many, and many who were paralyzed or lame were healed. So there was great joy in that city. So instead of going into hiding or staying silent, the followers of the way begin to boldly proclaim Jesus. And it's interesting, in verse 4, the author uses the word scattered. Now, the word scattered in Greek, the word that is used is diaspero, and that means to scatter seed. And so we get this cool word picture of this, imagine God kind of spreading the seed of Jesus, kind of spreading the good news kind of wherever he goes, like a person scattering seed in a field, and being able to use people to share this good news about Jesus. And specifically, we see in this passage this man named Philip. And Philip is a contemporary of Stephen, who was stoned earlier and was killed. And Philip goes into this region called Samaria, one of the places that Jesus told his followers to go. But the Jews didn't want to go to Samaria because the Jews and the Samaritans literally hated each other. The Jews hated Samaritans so much that they wouldn't even walk through the city to get from point A to point B. They would go around the region and go out of their way because they didn't even want to be anywhere near a Samaritan. And the Samaritans decided to build their own temple to worship God where they were because they didn't want to worship next to a Jew. There was massive need for reconciliation in this area. And so God sends this man named Philip to go into Samaria and to proclaim the good news of Jesus, and he begins to perform miracles. He casts demons out of people, and he performs these miracles of healing. And maybe the most incredible miracle of all is it says that there was great joy in the city. Somebody had come from Jerusalem into Samaria, and there was joy, something that was unheard of. It's just incredible. And the calling that Jesus had issued to the followers of the way was finally coming to fruition. They were finally doing what he asked them to do. And despite that calling being 2,000 years ago, that's exactly what we have been called to as a church today. We are still called to be his witnesses to the ends of the earth. And this is going to be a major part of who we're going to be moving forward as a church. The last major initiative that we want to talk about in this series is maybe the most challenging major initiative, and that's this idea that we want to be a church that reflects the diversity of the early church, of the kind of the New Testament church. As you read through the New Testament and all the various letters, we read about all sorts of different groups of people that came together because of Jesus, and they worship together because of their love for Jesus. We want to create a church that reflects that kind of a community right here in Pierce County. We want to be able to have an impact in every neighborhood in Pierce County. And Pierce County is a beautifully diverse place. According to the most recent census information that I could find, Pierce County is comprised of 1/3 of the following races: Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, and people that are 2 or more races. Okay, 1/3 of Pierce County. In the Parkland community, all those races make up half of the community, which is absolutely incredible. I mean, we live in this beautifully diverse place. Okay, I want to keep saying that phrase again and again and again because I really believe that. We live in a beautifully diverse place. Jesus asked his followers to travel to the ends of the earth, and yet we find incredible global representation right here where we live. So why is it so easy for us to just be with people that are like us? So many churches in our country fall into this description of what we would say is homogenous, and that's to say that 80% of the individuals are made up of one particular ethnicity. Now, perhaps that's to be expected if you live in a part of the country where, okay, most of a certain area is of one race or another. But again, we live in an area that is beautifully diverse, and yet Rainier View does not reflect the communities where we are located. Our leadership, our staff and our elders, we don't reflect the communities where we are located. Now, before I stepped into my current role as the digital ministry pastor here at Rainier View, I was the Parkland campus pastor, and I shared this a little bit recently, but a 1.5 to 2 years ago, I really began to struggle with this reality that we were not effectively reaching our local community. In fact, I would say that we were doing a poor job. And I had several conversations with our elders where I voiced my opinion that, we need some different leadership, specifically in my role as the Parkland campus pastor. But nothing could be done about that overnight. In the same time frame, I actually began to read a book called The High Definition Leader by Pastor Derwin Gray, and I highly recommend this book. This book did something to me that no other book has done, and it actually compelled me to read the entire thing in one night. Okay, it's a little over 200 pages. I was up well past midnight reading it. I mean, I never said that I was a fast reader, but I read the entire thing in one night, and I started to get really excited about what the future of our church could be, what it could look like if we were to grasp on this idea of what it means to be a multi-ethnic church. The book was written by this pastor named Derwin Gray, and he leads this multi-ethnic, multi-site church out in North Carolina, and he makes this theologically rich argument for multi-ethnic churches, and specifically that the gospel demands that we intentionally reach all people. I remember I was sitting down with my son Nathan at a high school sporting event, and Nathan, both of his birth parents are of Mexican descent, and so we just started talking about kind of the diversity in Parkland and in Pierce County, and we started dreaming about what would it look like if Rainier View began to reach all the ethnicities in our community here, and what would that look like? And Nathan just he ran out ahead of me, and he actually contacted Pastor Derwin Gray over Instagram of all places, and he said, hey, my dad wants to get a hold of you. And so I was actually able to then set up a phone call, and Derwin and I were able to talk for a little bit about the future and continuing to stoke that fire inside of me about what things could be like. And so back in January of this year, as a staff, we started reading The High Definition Leader together, and we finished the book just before the coronavirus shut down the country, but we have continued since then to have really good conversations as a staff, and we're growing in this realization in terms of where do we need to go as a church when it comes to really be inclusive of people of all ethnicities, and how do we create a church where that's who we want to be. We want to reflect the diversity of the New Testament church. And so at this point, we're going to hear from Corey Wilson. And Corey Wilson's a member of our staff, and he's helping to lead this initiative of becoming a church that really reflects the diversity of our community.
Well, good morning, church. My name is Corey Wilson. I'm one of the pastors here at Rainier View, and I just had the opportunity this year to work with a great team of volunteers, men and women, as well as another staff member in our church, Cassandra, who is the children's pastor over at Graham Campus. And together, our job essentially was to talk about and think about how we as a church can reflect the communities that we're in better, and also to engage in this important work of reconciliation and trying to have meaningful conversations as a community about the divides that separate us in this world. And in that effort, it's complicated, and it was sometimes frustrating. Sometimes it was fun. It was such a wonderful time. But I've got a couple of leaders today who I wanted you guys to hear from, because I want you guys to hear their perspective. They're just representing themselves, their own opinions. This is something that we'll be talking about for a long time to come. But I just want to give you an introduction to what some of our conversations have looked like. So let's tune in. Introduce yourself. And what campus you attend, and that would be probably important information people want to know. So,
hi, my name is Janet Turner, and I attend the Parkland campus.
Hi, my name is Michelle Gray. I attend the Graham campus.
So, obviously, the place we have to start is in asking this question: like, why is this important for us as a church to jump into this?
Because, simply put, what the greatest commandment is, that God said to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and love your neighbor. And I think right now we are not seeing a lot of people loving like Jesus would have loved.
And when I think about this, I think about what John saw when he explains it in the book of Revelation, that he sees this vast crowd from every nation, tribe, and language standing in front of the throne and before the Lamb. And so that's what heaven looks like. And I believe that that is what God desires for our church to look like also.
Yeah. I've always thought of it as, like, when you look at the early church, the way that the gospel kind of took a hold of a community and it just reflected the beautiful diversity of the day that they were in, the place they were in, but also the effort of, like, working together through difficult issues. And so I feel like that's what makes this really super important. What makes, for you, I think, makes this thing so challenging? What is like one of the big difficulties, like, it's just tough about this conversation?
It's a big conversation. It's a big conversation that, unfortunately, I don't think in our little few minutes here that we're going to be able to fully get deep into and solve by any means. But what I think will be very challenging is, as we are trying to move as a body and as a church, I think it'll be hard to really have people's hearts prepared and being willing to be open-minded for the conversation. I really pray that wanting to engage in our community, wanting to see people who don't look like like yourself, is at the heart of it, that people truly want to see everyone for Christ and being in community with one another.
And I think the hardest part for me is to help people see why it's so important to move to a more diverse church. A lot of times people are just comfortable just staying where they're at. But if we want to be representatives of Christ, then we want to obey even in this area. And so the work is difficult. It's going to be challenging, but we can learn a lot from people that are different from us. Everybody has something to offer, and we're supposed to be one body. And so I think it would be, it's going to be challenging, but I think that we're all going to benefit and learn from it. Well, I was excited when I heard about the committee that was being formed. And when I was asked to come on board, I was excited, and then I was, a little hesitant, because it's so personal to me. This is my life. It's what I live daily. and to invite other people into my life. I just felt like if they didn't understand what it means to live in America, being a person of color, then they would just add to the hurt, you know. But I'm excited because Rainier View has decided to be a part of this great work, um, and learn more about what racial reconciliation is all about and what part they can play in it. And so that's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I think similarly, when I heard this group forming, I was proud to be a part of a church leadership that wanted to tackle this. It's again a big deal. It's not something that I think will be easy for some, for anyone really. But I was appreciative to know that as a church body, we wanted to love on each other again, mourn with each other, really find allies who will go along with us in this. So that was encouraging. The challenges, similar to what Janet is saying, it's vulnerable. It's something that my experience is going to be not the same as Janet's experience, not the same as other people of color, other people who have had things happen to them. So I think to acknowledge and be willing to listen and to understand that everyone's story is their truth, to, again, not be defensive, not be closed-minded, and to really listen to your brothers and sisters and hear what they have to say, I think will be a challenge, but hopefully one that's met with love from Christ. So
it's exciting to know that the church cares about all of their members, so a leadership that cares about what I'm going through and can walk alongside me when, I'm in pain is exciting,
Yeah, I would definitely say beyond just praying about it, which is definitely important, preparing your hearts and minds and beyond that, actually do something. I be proactive. And I think that's where we'll see the beginning of a change starting to happen.
Yes, it's not a Rainier View thing. It's a God thing. It's what God has commanded us to do.
So obviously this is the beginning of a long conversation and a lot of things that we'll be doing as a church. And so again, we encourage you guys just come be a part of things that we're doing, engage in this conversation, and yeah.
So we are at the very beginning stages of becoming a multi-ethnic church. This is a long-term initiative that we're going to be working on for years to come. And that's okay. It is worth it. It is worth the time investment for where God is sending us. It's not something that's going to come easy. It's not something that's going to come quickly, but it is worth it. We want the church to be a light in Pierce County, a light for unity and reconciliation. Over these past several weeks as we've gone through this series, we've talked about the major initiatives. This is who we're going to be as a church. We're going to be a place that focuses on growing young. That is to say that we want to not only reach, but we want to empower the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that. We are in the midst of creating a discipleship pathway so that a person, no matter where they are in their relationship with God, whether they haven't taken that first step or whether they've been walking with God for 50 years, we're creating this discipleship pathway so that each and every person can take that next step with God and to lay out that clear path for people. We've already launched our digital ministry. It's going quickly. I am overwhelmed with everything that has to get done, but I'm so excited for where God is going to be taking us with this third online campus, and it's going. And today, we've been talking about how we are going to become a multi-ethnic church. We want to reflect the beautiful diversity of this community that we live in, and ultimately what the kingdom of God is going to look like in the next life. We want to see that start happening now. Yeah. And for all these things to happen, each and every one of us needs to step up, and we need to practice sacrificial generosity. If we want to be able to see these initiatives take place, we've got to make sacrifices to make that happen. Rainier View, this is what we have been called to. This is the way. If Rainier View Christian Church is your church home, we're going to ask you to commit to this calling, that you would commit to partner with your brothers and your sisters in Christ here to this vision that God has given us to reach Pierce County. The way that we're going is challenging. The way that we're going is going to feel like the more dangerous path. But following Jesus has never been easy. Following Jesus has never been comfortable. Following Jesus means doing what Jesus did. In Luke chapter 9, Jesus said the following: "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." Choosing the way of Jesus means that we choose to die to ourselves, that we give up our own rights in order to follow the way, to be witnesses of Jesus right here in our local area, into our country, and beyond to the very ends of the earth. Or as we've seen here, as God has brought the ends of the earth to this area right here. This is what Jesus has called us to be able to share his love, to share the joy of Jesus with everybody that we come in contact with. But before we start running this way together, we need to begin by praying together. Normally at the end of a sermon, I would close in prayer, but I'm not going to do that with this message because I'm going to call all of us to pray. Prayer is one of the spiritual rhythms that we are practicing as a church. And so tonight at 6 p.m., we're going to be having concurrent prayer services, both at the Parkland campus and the Graham campus, as well as online. So if you can't get to either campus physically, you can check out our Facebook page at 6 o'clock, and we'll be live streaming one of our prayer events there as well. But we're going to ask you to join us in prayer tonight. Because before we can take any further action, before we can run ahead, we need to get on our knees first in prayer. And we need to commit ourselves to the way that our Jesus has called us.
Thank you so much for sharing that important message with us today, Mike. We have so many opportunities this fall for people of all ages, and we want to make sure that you are staying in the loop about it all. The best ways to do that is through our all-church emails, by following us on Instagram and Facebook, or check in anytime at rainierview.org. As Mike mentioned earlier, tonight, October 18th, we are going to gather in person and online to respond in prayer to what God is calling us to. So please plan on joining us at 6 p.m. at either of our physical campuses or on our Facebook page. You can get all the details and register at rainierview.org/events. We look forward to getting together to pray as we move into the future that God has for us here. We are excited to keep pursuing what God is calling us to as a church. This will require us as a church to be generous with our time, our hearts, our finances. If you call Rainier View Church your home, you can give simply by texting RVCC to 77977 to use our safe and secure online system. You can also give on our website or send in a check. If you're joining us today for the first time, please don't feel obligated to give. We are just so glad that you're here. We'll be together for one last song today. During this song, we encourage you to take your communion in your home. This is just a time we take to dwell every week upon the sacrifice that Christ has made for us. So gather some bread and some juice to take these reminders of Jesus' body and blood. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and we hope you'll join us again next Sunday.
The King of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song, and you are good, good. the king of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. And let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song, 'cause you are good, you're good. Oh, 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 you're never gonna let me down. 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 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, 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 you're never gonna let me down. 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 'Cause you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, you're good.